All right. Oh my gosh. Guess what, everybody? We're live. Guess who I have here with me? I have my favorite Colorado cowboy and regenerative rancher, Jason Wrich. How's it going, Jason?
Oh, it's amazing. The sun's shining. We got our canal turned back on after the hill slid down and pinched it off. So that's
Ooh,
a happy day when we got water running again. So it's going to be a great day.
it is going to be a great day. I loved that picture that you sent this morning with the sunrise and the mountains and everything. It's so pretty. Like, what a
Yeah. And it's one
blessing.
of those things where when I have a filled day and I sit down and reflect first thing in the morning and do some breathing and some journaling and make a plan, it's like really just set yourself for success. And that's really what it's all about.
It is. I love that we're starting off with all this juicy stuff already. So, okay, let's introduce you though. So you're Jason Wrich of Wrich Ranches, and I met you through the Beef Initiative a couple weeks ago at your gorgeous ranch. Tell everybody, what was the experience for, and then we can talk about our morning practices too, because that's like really
Sure.
important.
Well, so it was the second Beef Initiative conference. The first one was in Kerrville, Texas, and the second one we did at our ranch in Crawford, Colorado. And of course, Texas Slim and I started talking very early on about what we were doing. And of course, I was all in on what he's doing because that's really a huge priority of what we do as far as education. And then, of course, feeding people nutrient dense animal protein. And so it was a perfect fit. And when you go at it with your whole heart, it's really easy to work together. And that's the thing that has been so seamless for Slim and I. And the reception, the outpouring of love. I mean, it was way far exceeded my expectations in so many ways. And it's literally like a family reunion of a family that you didn't know that you had. And
Yeah.
there was so many people that stayed on for days and days and days afterward. And I would run into them in town, and it was like a long lost friend that you'd seen again. It was hugs and kisses and smiles and happiness. And it was just amazing. And now through all of those connections, we're just building upon that. And, both the Bitcoin education as well as the beef and rancher and regenerative farming information. And so it just continues to grow.
Yeah, I like you was like pretty blown away. Like I wasn't exactly sure what to expect, and it felt like the family reunion of the family you always knew you wanted, but you didn't know you really had out there. And I feel like from so many angles, through the food and through love and through spirituality and through Bitcoin, of course, like it was this really gorgeous fusion of hearts and souls, coming together for this purpose. And I'm like, oh, more, please. I want to support this. And I'm so grateful to get to be a part of this journey with each of us. So it's magical.
Yeah, and it really is. And that's the thing is so many of us as professionals are only in our own little group, our own little sect. And then when you put those type of like-minded individuals with different expertise and you put those passions together, it's amazing just how quickly it builds and how strong the signal is. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that just continues to just blow my mind. And so leaning on some of those expertise, whether it's Bitcoin mining or running your own node or how you self custody and all of those things, which are so important in this space to get that education piece out there, that I've been able to learn from them, lean on them, and then take the information that I've gleaned and pass it on to the next farmer and rancher as well. And it's just so powerful.
What was your feedback from your local community and the ranchers that were there who, because I got to meet a couple people who were like, what the heck is Bitcoin? And, I'm an old timer and all this kind of stuff. What was their response? Like, I'm just
Well, I've
curious.
run into a handful of them since. And so we've had one private meeting with one of them where
Mhm.
I helped them onboard their own wallet and transferred some Bitcoin to them, and then, let them play in it so they could just be comfortable and know that it's not something to be afraid of. Of course, one of the old timers, essentially just repeated his mantra is, I'm an old timer, I'm a cash and carry kind of guy, all of that stuff. But what we were talking is, I was talking with his grandson who
Hmm.
understands it better and also is more interested in it because he sees the value in it, and he feels like with the devaluation of the dollar, that Bitcoin is just harder money. And if you're going to store something in it, you need to know how to custody it appropriately, and all of the strengths of the security portion of it. So in talking to the old farmer and rancher, I said, really what we need to do is get you set up so you can transfer it to them in Bitcoin, for multiple reasons. Some call it maybe tax evasion. Other people might call it just keeping your own money, and keeping the government out of it. But the other thing too is anytime you transfer large amounts of money around, it red flags on the traditional, financial system. And a way to transfer wealth without doing that is, of course, private custody Bitcoin, transfer to another private custodied wallet. So
Yeah.
he was interested and on board with that. And so we're going to have a meeting midweek next week, just to work through that with him and just really show how simple it actually is.
And I think, to add on to that, one of the gentlemen I spoke with, and I apologize, I forget his name, but on Friday night, and we may have talked about this, but he was, just like, okay, tell me what Bitcoin, I didn't understand, he didn't get it. And of course, my first, rather than being an intelligent person and asking him more questions, I just started spouting out like, well, Bitcoin is a savings technology and blah, blah, blah. And he just looked at me like, well, I'm kind of hand to mouth, and every week or every month, when the money comes in, it goes out pretty quickly, and then I was just like, oh, okay, what about credit card fees? I'm like, do you take credit cards? And he's like, yeah. And so I'm like, you're paying 3%. It takes time for you to get, your money settled, your final settlement. And I'm like, you can get, final settlement for half a point, if you're accepting in Bitcoin, or a point if you're using like IBEX. So I had Rye come over and, talk to him and share with that. And then, because I'm like 2.5% on your bottom line is kind of big if everything's going in and out pretty quickly. So I'm like, you could get, a happier bottom line that way. So that lit him up a little bit. So I think it was another just good thing that I learned on ask more questions before you open your mouth, Val.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is there's so many misconceptions. I mean, we have so much FUD that's happening by the federal government because they want to continue to control you.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that it's all about education. I mean, you can go right back to when we made red meat the devil. It's the same thing. I mean, it was a slow roll, and the more FUD you put out there, the more propaganda, the stronger the signal was. And they've done the same thing with Bitcoin. And it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of intentionality to kind of steer that ship away from what mainstream media is telling us, and of course the federal government's telling us. Because if they can't control you, then
they can't tax you and take your money. Yeah.
They can't do like what Trudeau did in Canada and lock up all your bank accounts and take all your money.
Yeah, that to me, like, that was a tipping point for me too. Like, I had already been like full in Bitcoin, and then when that started happening, it was just like, oh, this is a mission now. Like, screw these guys, And so that was a huge thing. Do you ever foresee, like, I sent you that video this morning of the young woman talking about, feed prices going up to feed her, her horses and chickens and goats and cattle and everything. Like, what do you predict is going to start happening? Because obviously we've got, the animals that are just not, they're out there eating grass in the fields, like the grass or haze, but then you've got all these other, what do you think is going to happen there?
Well, I mean, we've already seen it. So a lot of the places that rely on a lot of early rains to grow their native forage didn't get any rain. So they've been liquidating tens of thousands of head of cattle. Well, most of those cows were either bred cows or they were cows with young calves at side. And so that if you look at it from that standpoint, you were looking at their culling cows that were pregnant because they couldn't afford to feed them anymore. And so in 18 months, those calves should have been in feedlots to feed, the people that are buying grocery store beef. And so if you take that supply out, it's all about supply and demand. So you reduce the supply by, 7%, 13%. They're speculating up to 15% of total liquidation of the cow herd
your prices have to go up. And of course, they're not going to make any more at the farm gate. The cattle ranchers aren't going to make any more at the farm gate, but it's going to be the middlemen in the feed yards, and then of course the packers that are going to be making that money. It's the same thing for, if you look at fuel, right? We've got record fuel prices and record profits in all of these fuel companies, big, Exxon Mobil, all of those guys. But that's not necessarily supply and demand. It's you raise the price, people continue to pay it. So you're just going to make more money, make more profitability. Well, they're not going to pay us any more money at the farm gate. So they'll continue to squeeze out the guys that can't afford to buy feed, and get more centralized all the time. That's why it's so important to get out and shake your farmer and rancher's hand and buy direct from the producer, because that way, number one, you know what their practices are. Number two, you're supporting those families. You're keeping them on the land because that's really what they want to do. And number three, you're getting a higher quality and more reasonably priced product as well. So it's like a win-win-win, and everybody benefits. The producer benefits and the consumer benefits, and it's a no-brainer. And there's people that say, well, it's just so much work. I don't know who my farmer or rancher is. Like, well, have you even asked around? Have you even done a Google search? I mean, that's how basic it is, and if you want to do what's right by your family as far as feeding them, it takes a little bit of work. So somebody's got to do the work. I mean, Texas Slim and I and Justin Trammell and Cole, K&C, I mean, we're out there, we're shaking hands and kissing babies because that's our livelihood. And that's what drives us to do more and get bigger and help more people. And then the more people we can bring on board, like the Warrens with Holy Cow, I mean, they're excited to start transacting in Bitcoin as well.
Yeah.
And so we can support each other. We can get back to this circular economy that we continue to talk about. I was like, I bought a node so I can start running a node. I paid in sats. I bought coffee. I paid in sats. It's one of those things where, and then I, of course, set Bitcoin for payment in beef. And so you got to keep that circular economy going, get more and more people bought in to where they can transact in Bitcoin. And also, just like your savings account, you start scraping some of that off, whatever percentage that is, and put it in cold storage so it's there when that rainy day comes.
Yeah, I think, the circular economy mindset and the peer-to-peer food sourcing is so important because we don't know what's going to be happening around the corner. I mean, look at what Pelosi just did and all of that in Taiwan. And I'm kind of like, okay, are we going to, what's going to happen here? And we must have food. And if you're not in a good relationship, and this is clearly taught me so much, because I've been in the normal mainstream. Okay, I'm going to go to Costco and I think I'm getting organic beef there because it says organic and grass fed. And I think I'm doing the world a favor. And then now, of course, meeting you and Slim, I'm just like, oh, okay, that's not actually optimal, and it might not even be really truly grass fed or organic, based on all this bullshit labeling stuff, so I'm getting re-educated as we go. And I think the peer-to-peer thing is an important conversation to have. And it's an important topic because a lot of people have the mindset who are Bitcoiners are like, just hodl, hodl, hodl. I'm never selling. I'm never touching it. And it's kind of like, in order for this to truly grow, you got to do both. You got to hodl just like you would put your dollars away in savings. And then you have to use some in your wallet and keep them flowing out into the economy, because every sat that we put into this circular economy, it's a penny away from the old fiat system. And so every time we say no to that fiat system by saying yes to transacting in sats, we're moving the mission forward for mass Bitcoin adoption.
Absolutely. And then when you're running on the Lightning Network and all of those on-chain transactions, you're paying someone to run that node to make sure that it stays strong. And so, sure, I agree, hodl, hodl, hodl. And I'm a classic example of that, of like, I'm just going to stack sats no matter what. I'm going to hold on to this with this scarcity mindset of, there's only ever going to be 21 million and my entire future is dependent upon it. Just bring it in, stack it, put it in cold storage. But then I started approaching it the way that I approach my life and my business, with this open hand, open heart, and open eyes with everything, right? So
Yeah.
you have to be all knowing and you have to take in all that information. And when you start approaching Bitcoin from that same standpoint, you're like, I have to share my wealth, whether it's my wealth of knowledge, whether it's my wealth in Bitcoin or my wealth in fiat. I have to share that with other people to make sure that it comes back to me, because that's the way it works. You pour it out and it pours back in, and it's always tenfold.
It
And so
is.
then that switch flipped in my mind of like, okay, well, this has to be part of a circular economy if we want it to continue to grow. And I have to share that with other people and show them the importance of it, show them all the tricks and facets of it. Just like, when I took people on a tour of the ranch, one of the ranches that I managed, and I just poured my everything into it, and got emotional a couple of times because I truly feel that deeply about it. It's like, it's all about growing soil and everything from there on up, ending up in human health with, steak, ground beef, roast, or whatever on a family's plate, because that's where it's at. And that's how passionate I am about it. It's the same way that I feel about Bitcoin.
Yeah, I feel like it is. These are things for our future. I mean, we've got the technology of Bitcoin that has never been, invented or anything like it, for our future. And then we've got the old school way of living, which is
Mhm.
living off of the land. It's making sure your soil can keep producing each year again and again for your family and for your animals. And so, it's so cool that they're both together at the same, they serve each other, because it's like, wow, yeah, we have this ability to transact value, and we have this and store value, and we have, this energy called food that we need. And I watched a movie called Kiss the Ground. Are you familiar with all of that? Like,
Oh yeah.
I was kind of blown away, by I forget the rancher that was on there, and he was sharing like how he revitalized this land, and how his neighbor's land was just all because he was doing, not the regenerative way. So can you speak to that a little bit more for people about like what's the difference, and why is it so important that we practice and support regenerative ranchers and agriculture versus, monocropping and Monsanto and all that crap?
Well, for me, it's pretty simple. So, conventional agriculture is an extractive process. It's almost like mining, because
Mm-hmm.
essentially what you're doing is you're growing plants that are mining the nutrients out of the soil, whether it's, macro and micronutrients, minerals, and then it's producing a foodstuff that's grown out of that.
Food
And
stuff.
so, yeah, well, and you know, there's a lot of argument about how humans evolved and their brains started to grow when they started cooking meat.
Mm,
And that's a fact. I mean, that's an undisputed fact. And what the grains would be starvation store. So it would be dry goods that you could store away for when you couldn't eat meat. Never early in evolution was it a full-time food stuff. It was something that you could store and go back to later. Your diet was predominantly meat. And so that's an extractive process. Whereas regenerative, essentially, you're actually putting back in. And so for us doing intensive rotational grazing or high intensity mob grazing and then long rests, depending on the type of property that we're on, whether it's improved irrigated pasture or dryland pasture, our stocking rate and stocking density is paired with the land mass and the type of feed that's there. So we will graze a place, and then it may not have no animals on it for 9 months or 10 months, whatever it happens to be, to let those plants go through that full life cycle, go fully to seed, and then that way they can procreate. And when we go back on them again, our cattle will knock all those seed heads off and eat some of them. They can live in the room and they can poop them back out and spread those seed around, to build, more thicker thatch, stronger stands of grass, fill in all the bare spots, and rebuild soil. Because that's what it is. You talk about, for every percent of carbon that you store in the soil, you can sequester, or you can stop or store another 10,000 gallons of water.
And so it's one of those things where the more soil carbon you have, the thicker the stands of grass are. Every rain event, you can keep it on your place so it doesn't run off. And I've seen that firsthand on some of the properties that I've managed that I've just got. We had a huge rain. They were really rough, barren looking ground, and the water would run off of those properties. Well, the property next to it that I've had for 3 or 4 years in doing our practices on it, there wasn't a drop that ran off of it. Although the terrain was exactly the same, just one of them is covered with thick grass. The other one is very sparse grass with some bare dirt. And so you can see it firsthand. Another thing, because we are a grass-fed and finished, all natural, we don't feed any grains or any byproducts. We don't buy any grains or any byproducts at all. And so we're insulated from some of these price hikes and some of these commodity markets because the only thing that we're buying is locally raised hay, grass alfalfa hay. And because we are good friends with the producers, we can control how it is raised. Most of them don't do any synthetic fertilizers at all, no pesticides, herbicides. Number one, because it's expensive to do. And number two, if you manage your pastures appropriately and you're feeding that with cow manure or organic chicken litter, you don't have to use any synthetic fertilizers. And when your plants are stronger, they fight off the pests better. Whether it's aphids, grasshoppers, all of those things, they want to eat the weak plants first. They don't want to eat the strong plants. Where when the majority of the stand is strong, it's easy to produce healthy hay without having to have any chemical inputs. So that's another part of that is like shake your farmer's hand, shake your neighbor's hand, so that way you can all get together and manage the land the same. Because if you have someone that uses a lot of synthetic fertilizer and you have a big rain event, then all of that nitrogen washes off of their property onto your property, into all of your stock ponds, causes big algae blooms and a big mess there. And so it's comes down to knowing your neighbors and working towards a common cause with the idea that you want to leave the earth better than when you found it.
And what's your feedback from your neighbors who may be using these other practices? And how has it been? Have you converted anybody, or are they like, yeah, it's a great idea, or whoa, I got a lot to learn? Like, what's been your experience with like your success ratio?
So really it runs the gamut. A lot of it comes down to the property owners that are using their farmland as a tax write-off for their other business, whatever that happens to be, their multi-million or billion-dollar business. They just use ag land as a way to funnel cash and dodge the tax man. And so those people are all high inputs. Like they buy new tractors every year or every other year. They have the newest, latest, greatest equipment. So it's really easy for them to use fertilizer as a fantastic cost to be able to depreciate, a fertilizer spreader or a spray rig or whatever. So it's a little harder to convince them. What they have done for me is we've done some ditch work and kind of an agreement on a buffer zone that they don't apply, within 40 feet of a fence line, or we put some tail ditches in to where it rediverts that water around some of my stock ponds, instead of dumping straight into my stock ponds, and then you have an algae problem. But it's interesting because we have a lot of new neighbors. So there's a lot of retirees that have moved out of the city and they want to have their little piece of heaven. And they usually do it. They usually farm for a year. And then by the time the year's over, they're completely worn out because it's just a lot of work. And so through networking, and of course, my name is out there to all the neighbors, they're like, get a hold of this guy. He may be interested in taking care of your land for you. And so I've had.
You just broke up. I don't know if that's me or you, Jason. I don't know if you're for. Oh, there you are. Hi. Okay.
Yep.
You were
Hello.
saying, are you back?
So
Can you see me?
Yep, I can. We're
Okay,
back
cool.
on.
So, yeah,
So,
it kind of cut at where you were saying after a year they get tired and then they know you.
Right. And so they find me through the network of I'm the hippie cowboy neighbor,
Mm.
that does things a little different than everyone else. And so they get a hold of me, and we work out a lease agreement. And oftentimes it is I do what I do and they leave me alone and they help as much or as little as they want. I just finished picking up irrigated gated pipe on our property yesterday for a landowner, and she wants me to stay on. She said she's willing to do all the irrigating next year, and then I can just have the hay because she just wants it green and for it to be mowed. And so that's perfect for me. I have a minimal amount of time input. I put pipe out in the spring, pull pipe out in the fall or late summer, and that's it for me. And so I have a limited amount of time expenditure, and yet I think we put up 8 big square bales on that property. The hay field's only like 7 acres or something, but it grows pretty good stand of hay. And all I have is to pay the custom farmer to come in and cut the hay. So those relationships are stronger and stronger and stronger all the time because the other neighbor sees what you're doing there. They like the way it looks, and so they want you to take care of their place, on and on and on. The biggest thing is I've gotten the reputation, and I'm to the point where I'm either going to have to hire an employee to kind of manage those things and focus more on the education portion of it, because I'm getting, text, emails, DMs every day of people wanting more information on how they can be involved or what they can do or how they can support me, which I do a lot of walking around and talking on the phone while I'm doing other stuff, or driving a tractor while I'm talking on the phone. So that we're kind of at a crossroads there. I mean, the business is built, to the point where it's time to actually start putting some systems in place to, number one, take some of the load off of me, and also to capitalize on some of the opportunities that I'm seeing are coming about.
I love that. Well, and congratulations, because that seems like you're obviously doing something right if you're getting, all these inquiries and the people around your community are seeing what you're doing. They're like, I'll have what she's having,
That's right. Absolutely.
And so, I think we spoke about this. I know I spoke with Slim about it quite a bit, but, thinking about, like, for you, obviously systematizing, like, maybe some apprenticeships of people who, because there's just last night we were doing a panel on fear, and Coco was
Mm-hmm.
on there, and she was talking about just them living on their land and everything and learning the things that they're learning. I mean, especially in the Bitcoin community, there's tons of people who are like, yeah, I want to go homestead, and yeah, I want to go learn how to live in the land. And so there's people out there, I bet, if you put like a couple little programs in place, you can be like, okay, this is for 90 days or a year or a couple years, whatever it is, the seasons, you obviously probably got to go through a couple seasons to understand, but like they can be apprentices with you, and then that way you can get some support from people who are, committed and interested and signed up for the X period of time. And then you can go be, spreading your magic, at scale. Right. And
Absolutely. Because I think of it as, like a bee. I'm the bee, and I'm being able to pollinate and spread that signal, and
yeah,
then pass it off to another bee, and then let them go do the same thing, and it just continues to grow and grow and grow.
yeah.
So,
It's important, and obviously it's gonna be even more important. It's a survival thing. This isn't about, as much as I love art and music and all the good, fluffy stuff, is like, this is stuff people have to have. It's baseline survival, and we don't know what's around the corner. And so I feel like, the more that we can support people like you and Slim and what you guys are up to, it's very important to get the word out, and it's important to uh, empower people with actionable ways that they can do things, you know, not just talking about stuff, but like, come hang out with Jason for a while and help him do his things. Like, I think I saw you having a couple pictures of the meat mafia guys were
mhm.
helping you. Yeah. And so do you want to share a little bit? Like, are they still there helping you? Or are they still, was that just right after the conference, or what was the vibe there?
Well, Harry came out a couple of days before, and then of course, Steak Eater Mike came out the whole week before the conference, and so he got full immersion, and he's got some dirt on me with some stuff that we did, which is just part of the daily life of making repairs and figuring stuff out and just making stuff go, And he's like, I don't know how many times he said, I'm not going to take a picture of this just in case. So, but it was a fantastic time. And then Brett and Harry stayed another day because Brett had to fly out the next day. And so I was like, hey, let's meet up. Let's go do this. We'll irrigate together in the morning and we can do that. And then you guys can help me, haul the tables and chairs back to the rental yard. You got to use those buff studs for some of the stuff they're good for. Carrying heavy stuff is definitely high on their ability list. And so then we went to another property, and they helped me put some gated pipe together so we get ready for the next run of water. And so and all of that stuff I would have done by myself had they not been there. So not only did it save my back, it gave them an opportunity of like really a day in the life of a cattle rancher. I've been messaging with a gal who found us through the Beef Initiative, and she's just amazed at how physical cattle ranching is. And she's always saying, well, it's going to keep you in good shape. It's going to keep you in good shape. I'm like, either that or you'll be a broken down old man before your time. So needless to say, I don't need a gym membership, and I stay in pretty good shape.
I know. I think I saw you post something that said, like Rancher CrossFit.
That's right.
It's true though. I mean, think about it. Like, I mean, you're sharing it, but like you could get a lot of these young people who are like kind of in between, like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm kind of in transition. I don't know if I want to go to college, or maybe I just got out of a divorce, or maybe this is happening and I'm sold my business or whatever. It's like, there's tons of people out there who are in that unknown zone and looking for the next thing. And this is obviously when it lights you up. It's kind of like, cool, I can do something good. I can use my body. I can, help my neighbors and make the soil better for the future and everything. I mean, it's a great combo plan,
It is. And that's the thing. I don't know how many, like young men who have graduated high school, and it's exactly what you said. They weren't sure what they wanted to do, where they wanted to go. And so they came to work for me, and I taught them, how to irrigate with side roll sprinklers, how to run a chainsaw, how to run a tractor, how to stretch fence, build fence. And so lo and behold, by the time they were done with me, they had a job offer working for one of the neighboring farms or ranches full time, or a fencing crew, or it gave them enough like self-confidence to be able to get out in the workforce and in the job market and really do something. And it was just, they needed someone to say, hey, you can do this. I'm going to teach you how to do this. And I'm going to prove to you and help you as like the big brother figure.
Yeah.
And so many kids just don't have that. I mean, you look at how many broken homes and failed marriages and just problems, or you have a lot of kids who their parents have never taught them self-responsibility. They're not responsible for anything. It's always somebody else's fault. But you come and spend a day with me, if you mess up, you're going to own it, or you're going to be down the road. You can kick cans, and blame someone else. And I instilled that in my kids, and my kids are bulletproof. I mean, they've got thick skin, they've got responsibility, but on the same token, they know what respect is, and they know how to respect people and how to talk to people, no matter who they are or what they are. They know that we were all made the same. And if whoever it is that they're talking to has any respect for themselves, they can talk to them just like adults. And I love to see that. Our son's 14 and he can talk to anyone about anything, because that's just the way he was raised, and our daughter, who's, I believe it or not, a senior in college this year, getting her nursing degree. I mean, that kid is bulletproof, I mean, she's making more money now as a nurse extern than I did as a hand working in the coal mine.
Wow.
And I mean, she's just that good. She is rock solid, but it was a lot of work. I mean, none of that's easy. if you want to have good kids, you got to put the work in as a parent to make that happen. And a lot of people don't do that. And those kids, young men and young women, are really looking for someone to look up to, someone that has some knowledge in some stuff that they're interested in, and
Mhm.
they will do nearly anything for you to help you, just so they can learn it. And that's the thing that just totally, turns me on, is because I'm that passionate about it and I love sharing and educating. And that's what's driving me to do a lot of what I'm doing today.
Yeah, it really shows through, Jason. I mean, you're clearly a passionate educator. You care. Uh, you're no nonsense, but you're also cool and fun, So it's not like you're not totally this intimidating guy. You're approachable, but you're like, yeah, this is how it goes, guys, And I loved meeting your son. He was great. We're both like, we need to go DJ together because we both have the same music styles for the Friday night party, which is fun. And it's a tough one. I'm a single mom, and I don't my ex and I, we're great co-parents, but we have very different approaches toward life. And I'm a Bitcoiner, he's not. Uh and I think, the male figure, and especially on our son's life, it's like I want my son especially to have more wisdom around being a man and like knowing how to do stuff and build stuff. And I'm kind of like, I'm a little bit more of the man of the house than my ex is. He was always like, oh, hire somebody, hire somebody, hire somebody to do it. And I'm like, you're not going to teach him anything. I'm like, this is how you get on a ladder, and this is how you do stuff, and this is how you make things happen. And so it's, obviously I'm ultra feminine too, but it's like, it's difficult when marriages don't work out and these young people don't have, and especially with this, the family systems being so separate, and we're not all raised on the same, heritage of land and in the same spot. So it's a big problem for not just, America, but I mean, it's happening everywhere. But I think our kids here in this, privileged first world country, they're missing out on the opportunity to, be more in touch with the land and how things work. And so I love what you're doing, and I hope.
Well, and I totally agree with that. I mean, my kids have seen, birth, new life, and death themselves firsthand. And that's the thing that comes with living on a cattle ranch. They've had the successes of teaching a newborn calf that had a difficult birth how to suck from a bottle, and essentially revive this calf themselves. Because
Wow.
oftentimes I would go in and kick them out of bed. I would be out on a 3 a.m. heifer check, during calving season, and we have a heifer that's having a problem. So I'd bring her in and pull this calf or help her, and I'd go in and kick one of the kids, whichever one was age appropriate, make a bottle. We need some colostrum in this calf. I've got to work on the mom, whether I've got to sew up a prolapse or whether I've got to get her in because the calf was born out, somewhere and needed to be brought in because it was too cold. And they just get up and do it, but that builds that character and that resiliency because they have those successes. Like they
Yeah.
did it themselves, and that calf is alive due to their hard work, and they've also got to see dad be totally emotional when I've pulled one that was dead, a stillborn calf. You know what I mean? And so you pour 2 years into a cow, into a new heifer, and she has a calf and has a problem, and just how heart wrenching that is, because for everything. Number one, it's bad for the heifer. You can see her bawling and licking that dead calf and just feeling terrible about it, and then the financial aspect of it as well. There's just so much stuff going on there that people that don't experience that, they don't know anything about. I mean, all they know is, beef comes in a styrofoam dish with cellophane over the top of it in the grocery store. They don't see any of the the background of it and just how much work goes into it, and so like my kids and I and my wife, we'll be up moving cows in the mountains, on ATVs with our cow dogs and brushing, banging through the brush and the rocks and all of that stuff. And I mean, it's a lot of hard work, but it is amazing how strong of a family bond that it builds in those families. And the other thing too is when you're eating produce and meat that's raised on the soil where you live, you
Mm.
are all part of the same microbiome.
Mhm.
And you look at the health and resiliency of those people, especially if they can get away from conventional ag and not spray every weed. And I use the term weed very lightly because my cows will eat almost anything given the correct amount of motivation. So, very few things that are considered weeds I want to kill. Um, and also get away from all the insecticides that they spray on their cattle and insecticide ear tags and all the stuff that you can do to try and control your environment, versus modifying your practices to better utilize the environment, which is so important. I mean, we've spent, since about the 50s trying to, well, and I guess maybe even earlier than that, post World War II, we spent so much time and energy trying to change the environment to fit us versus changing what we do to fit the environment, whether it's the size of our cattle, the type of our cattle, what our eating habits are, the size of our equipment, all of those things. We've got bigger, 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 faster, faster, faster. Whereas my grandfather always told me, stay small and pay attention. I mean, that's where I
Mhm.
came up with that observational science, because he says you
Mhm.
have to get out and look at the land, and you have to get out and look at your cattle, because he had a little family farm, and that's really where I got the bug to want to have cattle and have animals. It's from him, and he grew up farming with horses. And talk about having an intimate relationship with the land is when you have to go out in the morning and harness your team of horses to go out and mow hay in the morning, or harness your horses and take them up to the mountains to log and skid the logs to the sawmill with your team of horses. I mean, that was just how they lived over in the San Luis Valley of Colorado. And so, listening to his stories, I wish I had recorded them because they're just amazing. They would just blow my mind about how hard you worked for what you had back then.
Wow. Well, you hit on a point right there about you wish you would have been able to record those stories, and I think about what you all are up to right now, and just you're sharing your story about your kids being there for the births and possibly the deaths of these animals. People obviously respond to storytelling. That's what we get through the heart and then into the head with stories. And so, what you guys are up to, and I love that Slim's starting his media company and everything. I mean, I think the more short stories and snippets of like, what's it like to be a regenerative rancher? What's it like to live on, what's it like to be the son of a regenerative rancher, and like, wow, I got up at, 2 a.m. to go help my dad. And this is what happened. And those kinds of stories, I think, are ultra important to share and to hold and document, so obviously as we grow and our future grows, because a lot of people aren't going to go watch like Kiss the Ground, for example. They may not. There's obviously all these other shows out there, but like little bitty snippets, can get them, oh, well, I want to learn a little bit more. Now I really want to go learn some more, so the more that we can keep sharing your stories of what it's like, and that yummy little hamburger you're eating, it's like, this is all the work that this beautiful man had to go do to make sure that you and your family are having some food and some good high quality food. I think it's really, really important. This isn't hyping up some thing. It's like, this is real. This is like our survival. And like the way that you're handling it is so noble and admirable, and it needs to be told. Like we have to tell more of your stories and all of the ranchers and the food producers that you work with. And I'm here to support in any way I can.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. And that's the thing for me is, there's a lot of my really close cattle rancher friends that have always been on the fringe, and they're all leaning more towards regenerative versus conventional. And when I
Mm,
talk to them about telling their stories, their response is almost always, well, we're afraid we'll say the wrong thing.
mm,
They've been brainwashed by a lot of the national cattle associations with our fight on PETA, or our fight on the World Health Organization, or our fight on this. Um, and what I tell them is, if you tell your truth, tell what you do and why you do it, and why you feel that's important, that's your truth. You can't say the wrong thing.
Right.
That's the thing for me is when I talk about a sick calf having to get doctored because they get sick. And when we have to doctor a calf, we know that it's going to go into the conventional food system because we will not use it in our beef program, because one of the pillars of our company and our business is no antibiotics, no hormones, ever, 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 ever.
Hmm.
And so, sure, it hurts us on the bottom line, but because we feel so passionately about it, and the more you learn and read about residual antibiotics in beef, the more afraid you should be of not knowing where your food comes from.
Mm.
Because the downstream effects are horrendous, and it continues to get worse as we import more and more, beef from overseas that we don't know how it's treated. We don't
Hmm.
know where it's been. And honestly, we don't know even what kind of beef that it is, because there's no traceability on any of that. Whereas if you shake your rancher's hand, they can tell you what the ear tag number of was on that heifer or that steer. They can tell you when it was born, when it was butchered, all of the pastures that it's been in. Talk about ultimate traceability and
Yeah.
therefore accountability. And so it completely mirrors the blockchain. I mean, everything is ultimately verifiable, right? And it
Hmm.
is all peer to peer. And I can get on there and I can look up every transaction from the inception till today, and every block that's been mined. It's the same thing with our beef. I can tell you who it was, who its mom and dad was, where it came from, what day it was butchered, what day it was weaned, what it weighed when it was weaned. I can tell you all of that information because that's the kind of responsibility and the accountability that we have with everything that we're doing.
I, of course, love that. And again, admire that deeply. I remember when I'd asked a question when you guys had the panel, I think it was on Sunday. And, somebody was asking like, what are the red flags that I should look for when I'm meeting my rancher and shaking my rancher's hand? And you gave a couple good comments. So I'll let you share, what are the things? And I know you've got to get going in a couple minutes. So I want to honor your time too. So maybe we'll wrap this. So this would be kind of a couple action steps for people who are listening on how to vet your rancher and your food producers.
Absolutely. So the first question should always be, can I come and see your ranch or farm?
Yeah.
Um, and if they say no, then that's an immediate red flag, right?
Mm-hmm.
We invited almost 100 people onto our ranch a couple weekends ago, and you could see it. You can see us with our warts. That's what my grandma used to say. Like, come to my house and you will see me with all of my warts, because all of your imperfections and all of your perfections and all of those things in between. Um, and then, of course, number two, it's like, can you tell me about your practices, whether it's your vaccination protocols, whether it's your feed practices, whether it's your weaning practices, whether it's your finishing practices, what kind of feed do you finish them on? And then also, where do you take them to be processed, and why have you chosen to use them?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because those are all great questions to ask. And anybody who cares enough about you and is interested in getting you as a customer and keeping you as a customer, those are all things that they should be completely transparent to talk about. Um, and that's the thing for me is, obviously I have the gift of gab and I care deeply about communication. And it is very important to me. Um, And some farmers and ranchers don't. That's why they do what they do, is because they just want to be on the land with the animals.
Yeah.
Um, they don't want to deal with people. And so I've been reaching out to many of them to try and help them with their marketing and potentially be the contact person to help them market their beef, to help them with their family businesses and keep as much money at their farm gate as they can.
Yeah.
Because so many of us are really struggling. It's literally a day-to-day, hand-to-mouth, year-to-year kind of operation, just because the feeder buyers have us over a barrel. So they're going to buy calves at whatever the going rate is, which is always depressed. It's always cheap. and then they will turn around and sell those to a backgrounding yard or a feedlot and make good money on them, and then turn around and the feed yard sells them to the packers and makes more money on top of that. Whereas if you can feed them yourself, and as long as your protocols align with what I'm doing, I can help them market their beef.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so necessary. And like you said, a lot of folks, and I can relate to this as an artist, like a lot of people are just like, I don't want to actually deal with other humans. I just want to do my thing, and which is whether it's music or art or ranching or growing food. It's like we need people who are comfortable like you, like, okay, I got this and here we go. We're gonna go, it's very important that we have all of the players on the team, you know. Um, so yeah. So okay, any final words for the world here about Jason Wrich and Wrich Ranches? You guys have to definitely go look up Jason and get some. I have a freezer that when I came back from the beef initiative, apparently it wasn't shut all the way. So it
Oh
got a bunch of stuff.
no.
I know. And thank goodness it wasn't that bad, but the whole thing is like got all the frost in it. So I'm going to go defrost it, move some stuff around. And then I need to go get some beef boxes from you. And that way I'm going to get on your program. I haven't had space for it. So now I'm like, okay, I got to clean everything out. So where can everybody find you, Jason? Obviously.
Well, I mean, I'm definitely active on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of those things. I have a TikTok channel, YouTube
cool.
channel, which I haven't been nearly as active just because trying to get caught up from all the Beef Initiative work. Go to beefinitiative.com. We're on there. There's a little blurb, but there's so many great producers there. You can find one close to you and support those guys all that you can. We have some educational stuff that's coming out through the Beef Initiative as well. So that's really fun. And support all of the Bitcoin folks that support us. Oshi, Michael, and the team are awesome. Ibex Pay is fantastic, as well. And so support those guys that support us and help us, because really that's where it's at. It's all about community.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about value for value and peer to peer, it really comes down to taking care of the guys that take care of you. And that's why I say support your local rancher and vote with your dollar. Because what we've found in politics is it doesn't really matter. All the big businesses support every candidate. So vote with your dollar and give it to the people that are doing stuff the way that you want it done, whether it's farmer and rancher with beef, hogs, lamb, poultry, eggs, whatever it is. Buy local from the people who are doing it the way that you want it done. And if you have to, orange pill them and talk to them about Bitcoin. That's a fantastic way to start that conversation is, let's transact in Bitcoin. Let me tell you why and how it works and what it could do for you and what the benefits are for you. Spread the word no matter what, through whether it's regenerative ag or Bitcoin. I mean, everybody needs to be brought up to speed and do their best to try and help one another and help continue to build these communities.
Yeah, I love that. I second that. And yeah, we've got it. We've got the solution. It's really not about not having the solution to all of these issues. It's about, how to be more resourceful with our time and with our connections with each other. And I believe, what you're up to is obviously, you're putting action to all these things. So I think people just need to kind of get aware and then know that it's like, all this is doable. We don't have to have mass starvation. We don't have to have any of this on our planet at all. Like there is a way. So, but it's eating and growing and supporting local. It really is, and you're obviously great evidence of that. And so I'm really, thank you, Sensei.
It's my pleasure, really, and it is my life's work. And it's a passion of mine, and it just continues to grow in strength and also in influence. And I love people like you that take the time to do your part to spread the word. I really, truly appreciate you, Val.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, Jason. It's so great to know you. I feel like we just met a couple weeks ago, and now it's like, yeah, we're lifers.
That's right. Absolutely.
For sure. So, all right, everybody. So for those of you listening who can't see the screen, please go follow Jason at on Twitter at Jason Wrich, JASONWRICH. And then you can also go to the Beef Initiative, beefinitiative.com. And then you can look up Wrich Ranches on Google, and you'll find his website. And you guys can go give him some support and get your beef boxes and meet your local ranchers and everything. Of course, you guys can follow me at DJ Valerie B. Love, and you can also go to djvaleriebelove.com for show notes, where I'll have all the links for Jason and the ranch and Beef Initiative and Oshi and Ibex and everything on there. And then, of course, Fountain FM. Go to fountain.fm, and you guys can be listening to this podcast and streaming sats to all of your favorite creators. And I'm just excited that you guys, hopefully, those of you listening, like, just do one simple thing today, and go learn about who are your local food providers, and at least you can get the ball rolling that way. So good calls to action. But yeah, so thanks again, Jason. I know you've got to bounce, and I know you're super busy. Thank you so much for taking time. Say hi to your family for me, and I hope all of you guys have a really wonderful day. And thanks for tuning in to Bitcoin, Peace, and Music. And I'm DJ Valerie B. Love. Yay!
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Aloha.